Hello there, my name is Hido and welcome to episode 200 and I'm wearing a wacky hat to celebrate. But enough of this nonsense. Let's go back to bald me. And we're looking at one of my favourite commanders ever and a pre-con commander from years gone by. Gone by? It's Aminatou the Fateshifter. 3 mana for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, draw a card, then put a card on your hand, from your hand, on top of your library. So manipulating the top of your deck, and also, just digging a little deeper. -1, exile another target permanent you own, then return it to the battlefield under your control. That's pretty goddamn good, and that's where the meat of this deck is really based. This is the second build of this deck. The original one was all based around cycling, of course. I adore cycling in every single way, but this is more of a sort of flicker, Planeswalker style deck. Then finally, -6, which I've never ever done. Choose left or right. Each player gains control of all non-land permanents other than Aminatou, the Fateshifter, controlled by the next player in the chosen direction. So you just rotate the table ever so slightly. You go, whoa, you can have that. Haha. Is that good? Well, it's interesting. And finally, it can be a commander. 3 loyalty as well. It's three. It's going to come in. Yes, we need to put up some protection for her, but she's going to survive maybe a hit like early game, and you're going to use her abilities. Really, really awesome commander. I love her in so many ways. And I'd love if you'd subscribe to this channel. This is episode 200, so it's been a while. I've been doing this for a good while, so come and join me for many more episodes. We'll get to 300 in no time. And without that, let's move on to my number 5. And at number 5, talked a bit about how, our Planeswalker will get attacked because obviously that's what opponents do. And we need to put up some barriers. And a good way of doing that is with things like Fibblethip the Lost. 2 mana, 1/1 homunculus. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. If it enters your library, from your library, or you cast it from your library, draw 2 cards instead. I don't care about that. I just care about drawing 1 card. And when it becomes the target of a spell, shuffle it into its owner's library. So the cool thing about this is we can play this before our commander comes down, draw a card, dig a bit deeper, and then when our commander comes down, we can minus her straight away, flicker our 1/1 here, and we're going to draw an additional card. It's generating so much value, and it's a blocker. There is this clause on Fibblethip that if it's targeted, we're going to shuffle it in. Who cares? At that point, our opponents have used a removal spell on our Fibblethip. We're ahead on the board, and we've probably drawn at least 2 cards. Really, really great card. Similarly, there's Watcher for Tomorrow. 2 mana for a 2/1 wizard with Hideaway. Now, because of Hideaway, it does come in tapped, but you get to look at the top 4 cards of your library, exile 1 face down, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. Then, when it leaves the battlefield, put the exile card into its owner's hand. So, if we flicker this, it'll come back in tapped, yes, but we'll get that card and then we'll dig 4 deeper again. So much value, and because we can get it out before our commander, it's wonderful. Brilliant, brilliant card to see. Then we've got Clattering Augur, can't block sadly. It's a 2 mana 1/1 skeleton shaman. When it's the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. But then there's 4 mana, return it from your graveyard to your hand. So if this block, well, no, it can't block, but if we sacrifice it or something like that, it attacks and dies, we can get it back, draw some more cards, and it's just a great target to flicker early game, dig into the deck. Then there's Dust Legion Zealot, the slightly different version of a card. 2 mana 1/1, when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Who cares about the loss of life, really? We're playing Commander. And the great thing is, this can block. Woohoo! Then, here are a couple of enchantments and other things that draw us a card and have a negative effect on our opponent. Confounding Conundrum, 2 mana for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player had another land enter the battlefield under their control this turn, they return a land they control to its owner's hand. Wonderful against green decks because it really hurts their ramp strategy. So if they've got a fetch land, they crack it that turn, well, they're going to be returning a land. Or if they're playing something like a Farseek, something like that, and they've already played a land, they're going to return that land. The ramp is nullified. And because our commander can flicker any permanent, this can be flickered, which is Really quite good. Draws another card. Then Birth of Meletus is a 2-mana saga. It's not an aura, but it is an enchantment, and this is great in so many ways. So, Chapter 1, search your library for a basic plains, reel it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. Always good to have that extra land there so you can play this on 2. Maybe you don't have a land in hand, but this gets you a land so you can play your commander straight away after it. And then if you flicker this, well, you get another one. And Chapter 2 creates a 0/4 colorless wall artifact creature token with Defender. Okay, so we're not going to be attacking with this, but it helps defend our commander fantastically. This card does everything what we want to do. It's card filtering, I guess. You know, it's getting us land so we can play our other cards, and it's protection for our Planeswalker commander. Wonderful thing to go flickering. And then finally, a classic is Baleful Strix. All of these other 1/1s, they're just going to be chump blocking, but this card has Death Touch. 2-mana, 1/1, flying, Death Touch. When it's the battlefield, draw a card. So fantastic flicker target, excellent protection, really great card overall. So there we go. A nice early game package, something we want to be playing before our commander hits the board, which, you know, necessitates the fact that we're going to be playing this on 1 or 2 mana. Really nice to see. Which that brings me on to number 4. And at number 4, we've got Sun Titan. So all of these small things, well, getting them back with Sun Titan is really, really possible. And that is so much value. But there's another couple of fun things we can do with Sun Titan. 6 mana for a 6/6 with Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So obviously all of that section we just talked about, you can return, but this can return fetch lands, ramping you in that way. But guess what our commander is? It's 3 CMC. So if our commander dies, Sun Titan can get it back. And then guess what? Our commander can flicker Sun Titan, comes back in, returns something else. Oh, just so much value. But now let's talk about a 4-mana enchantment. And, you know, you're thinking, well, Sun Titan doesn't return this. No, but this works fantastically with our commander. Phyrexian Scriptures is another saga. 4 mana. Chapter 1 puts a 1/1 counter on up to 1 target creature. That creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. Alright, that's okay. You know, buff our Sun Titan maybe. But then, Chapter 2, destroy all non-artifact creatures. So the way I see this working, the way it's worked in many of my games, and it's, you know, pretty measurable for our opponents, is Phyrexian Scriptures. It comes in, goes to Chapter 1, then put a counter on our Sun Titan. We go to the Chapter 2, which is our next turn, destroy all non-artifact creatures. Okay, then we use Aminatou to flicker the Phyrexian Scriptures. Oh, comes back in, makes something, you know, gives Sun Titan another counter. But then, because it's a minus our commander, if our commander goes to the graveyard, we can then attack with Sun Titan and get our commander back. Then flicker Phyrexian Scriptures again, maybe, flicker Sun Titan. There's so many different ways, and you can have a board wipe every single turn. And thanks to the fact that Sun Titan can bring our commander back, it just works magnificently. Really, really awesome combination. Which brings me on to a slightly different take on this, and some cards that I think work fantastically with specifically our commander. And Skyclave Cleric is probably one that you wouldn't have thought of. 2 mana for a 1/3 when it enters the battlefield, gain 2 life. Okay, that's sort of cool. It flickers to gain us 2 life, but on the backside of this card is a land. So early in the game, we can play this as a land. Then, because our commander can flicker lands, we can, you know, this we're talking, you know, high-level plays here. We can flicker the land that this is. It comes back in as the 1/3, so we have a blocker for a commander. It's just such a cool little interaction that you might never really see with any other commander, but it works wonderfully. It blocks, it, you know, early game gives us lands, and when we don't need the land, we can convert it into a chump blocker and gain a bit of life. Does everything I want to do in the deck. Then a land that's phenomenal in this deck is Bojuka Bog. When it's the battlefield, it comes in tapped, but it enters and exiles target player's graveyard. And because we can flicker this, we can exile everyone's graveyards. And graveyard decks are massive in Commander, aren't they? You're going to see a lot of them and play against a lot of them. So let's absolutely ruin their lives. Wonderful card. Yes, it comes in tap, but who really cares when it's disrupting someone's game plan? And it's a land, so there's literally basically zero sort of negatives for putting that in your deck. Then Act of Authority is a fascinating card. 3 mana for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target artifact or enchantment. Really, really nice bit of removal. Get rid of that Sol Ring on your opponent's side. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile target artifact and enchantment. If you do, its controller gains control of Act of Authority, and then obviously they can do it again. But the really cool thing about this card, and the next one as well, is the wording on our commander. So what our commander says on the negative is flicker target permanent we own. Not specifically that we control. So when we give this away to our opponent, we can flicker a permanent that we own. We own this. We don't control it at that moment. But when it goes out and comes back in, it's going to be back under our control. So we're going to get the enter the battlefield again. Absolutely phenomenal. Get this on turn 3. Then next upkeep, give it away to someone. Exile another one of their Sol Rings or something like that. Then play our commander, flicker it, and exile another one of their things. I've played this against someone who was playing artifact lands, and dear God, did they weep uncontrollably. It was magnificent, a brilliant card to see in the deck. Very similar is Wishclaw Talisman. 2 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, it comes in with 3 wish counts on it. Pay 1, tap, remove a wish counter from Wishclaw Talisman. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. An opponent gains control of Wishclaw Talisman. Activate this ability only during your turn. So when we've given it away, we can flicker it back onto our side, and our opponents never get to search. We could even search up 2 cards in 1 turn. You know, there's quite a few combos in this deck, and this card can just get us to those fantastically. Really, really nice and cheap, comes out early, and it works spectacularly with our commander. So a nice little collection there of interesting cards specifically with our commander. Which brings me on to number 3. And at number 3, we've got a Planeswalker. And, you know, because our commander's a Planeswalker, I really like the idea of moving into super friends with this deck. Because yet again, our commander's minus ability, we can flicker a Planeswalker, comes back straight away and use its ability again. Yes, the loyalty's reset, but if it's a minus, that's a bonus. So Ajani Steadfast is a 4 mana 4 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, telling return up to 1 target creature gains +1/+1, gains First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. So a nice bit of life gain, who cares? The real meat and potatoes is the -2. Put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each other Planeswalker you control. Ooh. So we could possibly get up to our commander's sort of ultimate ability. Finally, the -7, which I have got off a few times. You get an emblem with, if a source you control would deal damage to your Planeswalker you control, it prevents all but 1 of that damage. That's amazing. Really protects your Planeswalkers and also yourself. Really great emblem. Then, Elspeth Sun's Champion is just a fantastic card overall. It's a board wipe and a massive board presence all in one. 6 mana, 4 loyalty, +1. Put 3 1/1 soldiers onto the battlefield. But you can flicker this straight away with our commander. And then we've got 6 tokens, you know, not a nice big battlefield. Or -3, destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. We don't really care about that because all of our chump blockers and things are small, and our Planeswalker commander isn't a creature, so we're going to be happy to just blow up everything. Finally, -7, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, and have flying. Hey, all those tokens are now a lethal threat in the air. Then Dakin Shadowslayer is a wonderful Planeswalker for many, many reasons in this deck. 3 mana for a 0 loyalty. It enters the battlefield with a number of loyalty counters on him equal to the number of lands you control. So early game, okay, 3 loyalty, maybe if we're doing it on curve. But late game, it's going to come with a massive amount of loyalty. So we're going to be able to ultimate him quite a few times. And guess what? When we flicker him with our commander, he's going to come in with a massive amount of loyalty because it's an enter the battlefield, not an on cast. So we're going to minus him late game, then we flicker him, then minus him yet again. Fantastic. So +1, surveil 2. So you look at the top 2 and decide if they want to the graveyard or top of your library. -3, exile target creature. Wonderful removal there. And finally, -6, you may put target artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. This can really cheat some wonderful things into play, and there's some fantastic artifacts out there. especially ones that work with Planeswalkers. But also Liliana is a great enchantment that we might want to play in the deck. 3 mana for a legendary enchantment. When it's the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Ooh. Nice bit of removal, especially against those Voltron decks, which are going really all in the commander. At the beginning of each end step, if a Planeswalker enters the battlefield under your control this turn, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Really good with the flickering of our commander, and also if we're just casting Planeswalkers, nice chump blocker to protect our walkers. Then Oath of Teferi. I've got a lot of oaths going on. We're really committing to the cause. 5 mana for enchantment, legendary. It enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent you control, returns to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Nice for resetting, loyalty abilities, things like that if they got really low, or just any of our sort of enter the battlefield effect. We're going to draw a card of some things like that. The great thing is you may activate loyalty abilities of Planeswalker control twice each turn rather than only once. Ooh, that is phenomenal. All of these Planeswalkers are just going to get out of control, get their loyalty up there so we can ultimate, or get lots of nice minuses in so we can really manipulate the board. Then we've got Teferi, Temporal Archmage. Wonderful Planeswalker, and I think you know where this is going. He's a combo king. 6 mana for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them onto your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. Nice bit of digging. And then -1, untap up to 4 target permanents. Could that be used in any way? Yes, of course it can. -10, you get an emblem with. You may activate loyalty of the Planeswalkers you control on any player's turn, anytime you could cast an instant. Really gets out of control. You're exiling things on your opponent's end step, flickering things. They're attacking your Planeswalker, suddenly it's flickered out of the way. So powerful. And then we've got the Chain Veil. Now this works fantastically with this Teferi, specifically his -1, untap up to 4 target opponents. If one of them is the Chain Veil and the other 3 make 4 mana, well, we've got infinite activations of Planeswalkers. Chain Veil is a 4 mana legendary artifact. Beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate a loyalty ability of a Planeswalker this turn, you lose 2 life. That shouldn't come up too often, really, with the amount of Planeswalkers we have. And we always have access to one in the command zone. 4 and tap for each Planeswalker control. You may activate one of its loyalty abilities once this turn, as though none of its loyalty abilities have been activated this turn. That means we can just go over and over again and just churn out abilities. And this is a wonderful Planeswalker package. All of them work fantastically with our commander, and they all work so synergistically together. Really great stuff. That brings me on to number 2. I can count, I swear it. And at number 2, what have we got? We've got Kaya the Inexorable. And I talked about there being a few combos in the deck, and this is one of my favorites. I love that card. It's just so cool and so specific. So 5 mana for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, this text is tiny. Put a ghost form counter on up to 1 target non-token creature. It gains when this creature dies or is put into exile, return it to its owner hand and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Okay, so this could go onto one of our creatures, and then when we flicker it with our commander, we're going to get a token. Oh, magnificent. Or if we just got a Sun Titan, we can keep putting the counters on it and then get tons when it dies. Works great. -3, exile target non-land permanent. Wonderful, hits everything that we've sort of got an issue with. Really good. Obviously lands aren't hit, but we've got a few ways of dealing with lands if you really want to. But the real meat and potatoes of this card is a -7. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a legendary spell from your hand, from your graveyard, or from among cards in exile without paying its mana cost. Now, what are Planeswalkers? They're legendary, aren't they? Oh, that works pretty well, doesn't it? We're going to be casting things for free over and over again from exile as well, from our graveyard. Say our opponents have attacked them down. We're going to be able to reuse them. Oh, so good. But there's one card that works even better. Karn's Temporal Sundering. Ooh. 6 mana for a legendary sorcery. So it's legendary, so we can cast it from exile, say. That's interesting, isn't it? Maybe we're going somewhere with this. Target player takes an extra turn after this one. I'm going to send this guy over here. Return up to one target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Exile Khan's Temporal Sundering. Oh, that's pretty... Ah, that sucks. But wait! We can cast cards from exile. Oh, so much value. And this will just lock your opponents out of the game. Every single turn we're going to be casting this for free. Yes, if they have a counter spell, they can counter it. But guess what? You can just cast it next turn. Oh, so good. It's going to return things to their own hand. And from this point, you should win the game. Well, you'd hope so anyway. Then, if we're talking about extra turns, because they do work so well with Planeswalkers, Magister's Scepter is a really interesting one. 3 mana for an artifact. Pay 4 and tap. Put a charge counter on Magister's Scepter. Tap, remove 3 charge counters from it. Take an extra turn after this one. So, the cool thing about, playing Planeswalkers and things like that is you really sort of delve into Proliferate. And Proliferate is a mechanic that says put an extra counter on any number of target permanents or players. So, if we're proliferating our Planeswalkers, let's proliferate the charge counter on this. And I've already shown you a few ways that we can untap, artifacts and things like that, like with Teferi. This could potentially net us an extra turn. And if we've got enough proliferation going on, we can do it every single turn. Every. And then finally, we've got Teferi, Master of Time. Teferi's got a big look-in this deck. 4 mana, 3 loyalty Planeswalker. You may activate loyalty abilities Teferi, Master of Time on any player's turn. Anytime you can cast an instant. Ooh, nice combat tricks there. +1, draw a card and discard a card. Bit of looting, fills it your graveyard if you've got some delve spells, things like that. -3, target creature you don't control phases out. So this can protect, our Planeswalkers. Say someone's swinging in with a big threat and go, oh, stop that. But the real sort of great thing here is -10, take 2 extra turns after this one. Now, if we can get enough ways of, activating abilities multiple times a turn, every cycle of the table, we could potentially get 2 turns. Oh, that's pretty goddamn good, isn't it? And you can do this over and over again if you keep building up the loyalty. Great card and works amazingly in this deck. So that's a little extra turn package. Kill me. And that brings me on to number 1. And at number 1, what do we have? We've got Felida Guardian. So the flicker ability is the real star of the show on our commander. And this is wonderful because it's essentially that same sort of ability. 4 mana, 1/4 cat beast. Ooh, meow. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile another target permanent you control. Then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So, why is that good? Well, if we use this on our commander will flicker out, then we can minus on the Felida Guardian and just constantly go in and out of sort of existence. But that's a lot of enter the battlefield effects. We can do the exact same thing with Spark Double. 4 mana for a 0/0 illusion. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature or Planeswalker you control, except it enters with an additional 1/1 counter on it if it's a creature, or it enters with an additional loyalty ability if it's a Planeswalker. And it isn't legendary if that permanent is legendary. So all Planeswalkers are legendary, or are they? Well, this one isn't when it enters, but we can have this enter as a copy of our commander, then minus on our commander goes in, minus the commander, and then you just flicker them in and out. But what exactly is that doing? Is that achieving anything? Yes, it's a lot of enter the battlefield effects for Altar of the Brood. And now this is a way I've won a lot of games. 1 mana for an artifact. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So you're just flickering them in and out. They're going like this. And then our opponents are just milled into oblivion. Yes, if they're playing an Eldrazi Titan, we're a bit knackered, but it will probably take out at least 1 or 2 of your opponents. So a really great game-ending combination. And these 2 cards, Spark Double and Felida Guardian, just work so well in the general sort of basis of the deck, because we get another activation of a Planeswalker, we get another whole Planeswalker with Spark Double, and then it can just be a nice combo finisher. You can just leave these on the field, and then maybe the combo comes up. It's just great. It's just so good. And then Trinket Mage is a fantastic card, not only because it fetches up the Altar of the Brood, but because it can fetch us up ramp, Pithing Needle if you want to play a Pithing Needle and really mess with your opponents, and then our commander can flicker it. But it enters the battlefield, search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 1 or less, reel it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. So it gets the Altar of the Brood, but it also gets things like Ever-Flowing Chalice. 0 mana for an artifact with multi-kicker of 2. Enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked, and we can tap it to add a colours to your mana pool for each charge counter on Ever-Flowing Chalice. Ooh, really nice bit of ramp. Yes, flickering this is terrible because it removes all the charge counters. But I was talking about Proliferate earlier, and something like Tezzeret's Gambit works astonishingly well in a Planeswalker deck with a card like that. 3 mana and a Phyrexian or a blue. So you can either pay 2 life or a blue. Draw 2 cards, then Proliferate. Ooh, that's pretty goddamn good, and works fantastically in the deck. And then the ultimate proliferator is Deep Glow Skate. 5 mana for a 3/3 fish. You know, I do not like the taste of fish. Never have. It's the texture more than anything. When it enters the battlefield, double the number of each kind of counter on any number of target permanents. That is phenomenal if you're wanting to get some ultimates off on your Planeswalkers, or just go ridiculously big on anything you've got going. You're going to have a wonderful time with this card. And guess what? It's an enter the battlefield effect, so our commander can flicker it and we can do it again. And that is the sort of end portion of this deck. And I love Aminatou, and I'd love if you'd please subscribe. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and you've enjoyed the last 200 videos I've made. I very much enjoyed making them, so come and join me for many more. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.